Emily Carter brushed dirt off her hands onto her faded gardening apron, shielding her eyes from the morning sunlight streaming through the nursery's greenhouse panels. Her phone buzzed with another client inquiry. After years of hard work, her small landscaping business was finally gaining momentum. At 35, she'd built a modest life that allowed her to support herself and Lucas without sacrificing her dreams. Her peaceful morning routine was interrupted when she checked the mailbox. Among the usual bills and gardening magazines was an envelope that exuded wealth, thick, cream-colored paper with gold embossing that shimmered in the light. Her hands shook slightly as she recognized the return address, Sterling Industries, Manhattan. "Mom, have you seen my red programming notebook?" Lucas's voice called from inside their cozy bungalow, pulling her back to the present. She slipped the envelope into her apron pocket, not ready to face its implications. "Check your backpack, sweetie, the side pocket," she replied, steadying herself before heading inside. Lucas sat at their kitchen counter, hunched over his laptop, his light brown hair falling across his forehead in a way that tugged at her heart. Every year, he looked more like his father. "Found it," he exclaimed, waving the notebook triumphantly. "Mr. Thompson said we're starting a new project today. We're learning about algorithms, and I already have some ideas I want to try." Emily smiled, tousling his hair as she walked by. "Just don't forget to eat your breakfast, genius." She poured herself a cup of coffee, the envelope feeling heavy in her pocket. "What time is coding club today?" 4:30. "Can I ride my bike?" "Mia and Ethan are going too." "Text me when you get there," she agreed, watching him devour his toast. At 12, Lucas was already showing the same knack for technology that had made Daniel Sterling a tech industry giant. The irony wasn't lost on her. Across town, in a sleek skyscraper overlooking Central Park, Daniel Sterling stood at his office window, squeezing a stress ball in his hand. On his desk, wedding plans demanded attention, venue contracts, catering details, and Olivia's endless requests for his input on flowers and table settings. Mr. Sterling, his assistant Claire, appeared in the doorway. "The wedding planner needs final approval on the guest list today." Daniel nodded absently, his mind still on the morning's board meeting. Sterling Industries was about to launch their most ambitious AI platform yet, and the pressure to maintain his company's dominance consumed him. Any issues? Nothing major, though there was one name. Claire hesitated. Emily Carter. She was automatically included through the tech industry newsletter database. "But I can remove her if—" "Leave it," Daniel interrupted, surprising himself. "The invitations are probably already sent anyway." He turned back to the window, dismissing Claire with his silence. Alone again, he allowed himself to remember Emily, not the hurt, desperate version from their last encounter, but the brilliant computer science student who had challenged and inspired him before everything fell apart, before he had chosen ambition over responsibility. That evening, Emily sat at her small desk after Lucas went to bed. The invitation lay open before her. The words seemed to blur on the thick paper. "Daniel Sterling and Olivia Bennett cordially invite you." Her finger traced the embossed letters, recalling a younger Daniel, brilliant but kind, ambitious but genuine. Before success had hardened him into someone who could deny his own child. Lucas's laughter from earlier that day echoed in her mind, his excitement over solving a tough coding problem reminding her so vividly of Daniel that it ached. She reached for her phone, typed out a quick RSVP acceptance, and hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her son deserved to know his roots, even if Daniel refused to acknowledge them. And maybe, just maybe, seeing Lucas in person would break through the walls Daniel had built around his past. Emily tucked the invitation into her desk drawer, next to the folder containing 12 years of carefully preserved evidence of Daniel's paternity, evidence she'd never used, choosing instead to let Lucas's undeniable resemblance speak for itself. Lucas sat cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by computer parts he'd salvaged from the local repair shop. His fingers moved skillfully across a motherboard while tutorial videos played softly on his tablet. Emily paused in his doorway, marveling at his focus. The same intensity she'd once watched transform Daniel from a promising student into a tech prodigy, 10 minutes until dinner, she announced. Lucas barely nodded, absorbed in his project. And maybe we could tidy up some of these electronics before they take over your entire room? Mom, I'm building something important, he protested, finally looking up. His green eyes, Daniel's eyes, sparkled with excitement. Remember how you said the nursery's inventory system keeps crashing? I think I can write a program to fix it. Emily's chest tightened with familiar mixed emotions, pride in his natural abilities and anxiety about how much he resembled his father. That's thoughtful, sweetheart, but maybe start with organizing your room first. During dinner, a stir-fry made with vegetables from their garden, Lucas picked at his food, clearly distracted. Mom, Ethan's dad is teaching our coding club next week. He said he used to work with Daniel Sterling. Emily's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Did he? Yeah, he said Mr. Sterling was already creating amazing programs in college. Lucas pushed his peas around his plate. Do you know anything about him? We studied Sterling Industries in science class today. Their new AI platform is incredible. Carefully keeping her voice neutral, Emily set down her fork. We attended the same university. He was very focused, very driven. She took a sip of water, buying time. Why do you ask? Just curious. Everyone talks about him like he's some kind of genius. Lucas's expression turned thoughtful. Ethan's dad said he knew you too back then. Small computer science department, Emily deflected, standing to clear her plate. How's about ice cream? We still have some cookies and cream. Later that night, Emily found herself scrolling through news articles about Daniel. His upcoming wedding to Olivia Bennett, socialite and tech journalist, dominated the business pages. Photos showed them at charity galas and tech conferences. Daniel looked exactly as she remembered, just sharper somehow, harder. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Laura. You're really going to his wedding? Emily typed back. Lucas needs to know where he comes from, even if Daniel won't acknowledge it. And if he does, are you ready for that? Emily didn't respond. Instead, she opened her laptop, pulling up Lucas's latest school reports. His teachers' comments were glowing, especially in STEM subjects. Shows exceptional aptitude for complex problem-solving, natural understanding of programming concepts, leadership qualities in group projects. She'd shielded Lucas from rejection all these years, crafting careful answers about his father that neither lied nor revealed the painful truth. He had to go away, she'd said when Lucas was small. Later, sometimes adults make choices they can't undo. And recently, everyone has their own path. What matters is the family we choose. But watching Lucas grow into his talents, seeing Daniel's genius emerge in their son, made maintaining those careful boundaries increasingly difficult. Just last week, Lucas had won his school science fair with a project on artificial intelligence, the same field that had made his father a millionaire. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Lucas stood there in his coding club t-shirt, looking uncertain. Can't sleep, she asked, patting the bed beside her. He sat down, fidgeting with his tablet. I found some old articles about Sterling Industries. Did you know Mr. Sterling wrote his first successful program when he was my age? Emily's heart clenched. That sounds about right. Mom! Lucas's voice was quiet. Sometimes I wonder if my dad was like me, if he liked coding too. Emily pulled him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. You are your own person, Lucas. Your talents are yours. She kissed the top of his head. And you have so many wonderful qualities that have nothing to do with coding. But as Lucas hugged her goodnight and padded back to his room, Emily wondered if she was doing the right thing. The wedding invitation seemed to pulse from her desk drawer, a ticking clock counting down to a collision she'd spent 12 years both dreading and secretly anticipating. In her darker moments, she imagined Daniel's face when he saw Lucas, their shared features impossible to deny. But mostly, she worried about Lucas's heart, so open and trusting despite her careful protection. The thought of Daniel rejecting him again, this time to his face, kept her awake long into the night. Daniel Sterling stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching Manhattan's lights flicker to life in the growing dusk. Behind him, his engagement photo with Olivia dominated one wall, a perfect power couple captured by Annie Leibovitz for Vanity Fair's tech issue. "The board is waiting, Mr. Sterling," Claire announced through the intercom. He straightened his tailored suit and gathered his thoughts. Today's presentation would unveil Sterling Industries' most ambitious project yet, an AI platform that could revolutionize personal computing, the same project that had consumed him for the past 5 years, leaving little room for anything else. Olivia sat at the conference table when he entered, her presence both professional and personal. As tech's most influential journalist, she understood his world in ways others couldn't. She caught his eye and smiled, her fingers tapping notes on her tablet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, commanding the room's attention, "what you're about to see represents not just the future of Sterling Industries, but the future of human-computer interaction itself." The presentation flowed smoothly until a notification popped up on his screen. "Wedding guest list. Final approval required." His rhythm faltered for just a moment as Emily Carter's name caught his eye. Claire had flagged it earlier, but he dismissed it, trying to ignore the way it stirred something in his carefully ordered world. "Daniel?" Olivia's voice brought him back. The neural network demonstration. He recovered quickly, launching into the technical specifications that had made him a legend in Silicon Valley. But Emily's name lingered in his peripheral vision, an unwelcome ghost from his past. Later, in his private elevator to the penthouse, Olivia scrolled through the wedding preparations on her phone. The guest list came through. "There's someone from your college days. Emily Carter. She's running a landscape design firm now." Daniel loosened his tie. "Small company?" "Very. Mainly residential projects." Olivia studied his face. "She was in your computer science program, wasn't she?" Briefly. The elevator doors opened to their apartment, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Central Park. "She left before graduating." Olivia set down her phone. "Daniel, if there's anything I should know before the wedding." "Ancient history," he cut her off, pouring himself a scotch. "She made some claims, tried to complicate things when I was starting the company. Nothing came of it." But alone in his home office that night, Daniel found himself searching for Emily online. Her company website showed modest but elegant garden designs, local community awards, a small staff. Nothing like the brilliant programmer he'd known in college. He clicked through photos of her recent projects, stopping at one that showed her kneeling in a garden, explaining something to a young boy. The image was casual, probably taken by a client, but something about the boy's profile made Daniel's hand tighten on his mouse. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Coming to bed?" Olivia asked from the doorway. Daniel closed the browser. "Just reviewing some code." He followed her to their bedroom, where wedding plans lay scattered across her desk, seating charts, flower arrangements, menu options, a life he'd chosen ordered and predictable. But in his dreams that night, he was back in the university computer lab, watching Emily debug his first major program, her insights sharper than his own. Before success and ambition had rewritten their story, before her desperate phone call about a pregnancy test had threatened everything he'd built, he woke at dawn, his empire spread out below him, and tried to remember why he'd been so certain she was lying back then. But the truth was, he'd never really let himself consider any other possibility. It had been easier to dismiss her claims, to focus on building Sterling Industries into a tech giant. Now, with his wedding approaching and Emily's RSVP confirmed, Daniel found himself wondering what else he might have built or destroyed with that single choice 12 years ago. The Hamptons estate sprawled before Emily and Lucas as their Uber wound up the private drive. White tents dotted the manicured lawn, and staff hurried between them, making final preparations for tomorrow's wedding. Lucas pressed his face against the window, taking in the spectacle. "This place is huge," he whispered, "like a tech campus." Emily squeezed his hand. "Remember what we talked about? We're here for a special event, but we're keeping to ourselves tonight. Just dinner in our room, and maybe a walk on the beach." They checked into their hotel a few miles from the estate, where Emily had splurged on an ocean view room. It had stretched her budget, but she wanted this weekend to feel special for Lucas, regardless of what happened at the wedding. "Can I set up my laptop by the window?" Lucas asked, already pulling out his coding notebook. "The view might help me think through this algorithm I'm stuck on." Emily watched him settle into his familiar coding position, one leg tucked under him, bottom lip caught between his teeth in concentration, just like Daniel used to sit. 1 hour of coding, then beach time, she negotiated. Her phone buzzed. Laura again. You can still back out. No one would blame you. Emily typed back. We're already here. No turning back now. At the estate, Daniel stood in the center of what would become his wedding venue, Olivia directing the setup crew with precise efficiency. Tomorrow, 400 guests would witness their union. Tech industry leaders, venture capitalists, society figures, and one uninvited ghost from his past. The rehearsal dinner starts at 7, Olivia reminded him, checking her tablet. Try to wrap up your calls by 6. Daniel nodded absently, his mind on the notification he'd received earlier. Emily Carter checked in at the Seabreeze Hotel with guest. Everything okay? Olivia touched his arm. You seem distracted. Just thinking about tomorrow's speech? He forced a smile. The AI announcement will overshadow the wedding if we're not careful. Olivia laughed. Only you would schedule a major product launch the same week as your wedding. She kissed his cheek. That's why I love you. Always pushing forward, never looking back. But as the afternoon faded into evening, Daniel found himself doing exactly that, looking back. He stood at his study window, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold, and remembered another beach, another sunset 12 years ago. The night Emily had tried to tell him about the pregnancy, the night he'd accused her of trying to trap him, of lying to cash in on his growing success. His phone chimed with a message from Claire. Final guest list confirmed, Emily Carter +1. The rehearsal dinner buzzed with conversation and laughter, but Daniel barely heard it. His eyes kept drifting to the entrance, even though he knew Emily wouldn't be there. She wasn't immediate family or part of the wedding party. She wasn't anything to him anymore, yet something about that +1 nagged at him. He excused himself from a conversation with Olivia's parents and stepped onto the terrace, pulling up Emily's company website again. The photo of her and the boy filled his screen. He zoomed in, studying the child's profile, the way he held himself, the familiar tilt of his head. Daniel, Olivia appeared in the doorway. They're ready for the toasts? He pocketed his phone, pushing away the questions that had haunted him for 12 years. Tomorrow was his wedding day. The merger of two powerful families, the culmination of everything he'd worked for. But as he raised his glass to toast his future, a different future, one he dismissed as impossible, walked along a moonlit beach 3 miles away, a young boy pointing out constellations to his mother, his features an echo of the man who refused to see him. The morning dawned clear and bright, a perfect Hamptons day. Emily helped Lucas with his tie, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed his collar. You look so handsome, she said, blinking back unexpected tears. Mom, it's just a wedding. Why are you being weird? Lucas adjusted his navy blazer, a recent purchase that had stretched her budget, but was worth every penny. Just feeling sentimental, she replied. She checked her own reflection. The blue silk dress was simple but elegant, bought on sale months ago. Remember, if anyone asks, I know, Mom, we're here because of your garden design work. Lucas rolled his eyes good-naturedly. Can I bring my tablet? Not to the ceremony, Emily said firmly, but you can have it at the reception. At the estate, controlled chaos reigned. Daniel stood at his window, watching guests arrive while his best man rattled off the day's schedule. A flash of blue caught his eye, a woman and child walking up the path. Something about their movement made him pause, but they disappeared from view before he could focus. The ceremony itself was a blur of perfect moments, meticulously planned by Olivia and their wedding coordinator. Daniel spoke his vows clearly, smiled at the right times, kissed his bride to enthusiastic applause. It wasn't until the reception that his carefully constructed world began to crack. He saw Emily first, seated at a table near the back, more elegant than he remembered, but essentially unchanged. Then his eyes shifted to the boy beside her, and the ground seemed to drop away. The child was engrossed in what looked like a tablet, his profile eerily familiar. As if sensing Daniel's attention, he looked up, and Daniel found himself staring into a face that could have been pulled from his own childhood photos. Daniel? Olivia touched his arm. The photographers want formal shots. He turned away, but the image stayed with him. The boy's features, The way he held himself, the familiar furrow of concentration between his brows. Throughout the photos, the toasts, the first dance, Daniel felt his presence like a physical weight. Emily kept Lucas close, steering them clear of the main crowd. But during dinner, she noticed Daniel watching them, his face unreadable. Olivia noticed too. Emily saw the exact moment the other woman made the connection, her eyes widening as she glanced between Daniel and Lucas. "Mom, can I show you something?" Lucas held up his tablet, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around him. "I figured out that inventory program for the garden center." "That's wonderful, honey, but maybe later." "Is that a coding project?" A new voice interrupted. Daniel stood at their table, Olivia beside him, both wearing practiced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Lucas looked up, excited to share his work. "Yes, I'm writing a program to help my mom's business. The current system keeps crashing, so I'm building something better." Daniel's facade cracked for just a moment as he saw his own childhood enthusiasm reflected in Lucas's face. "How old are you?" he asked, his voice barely steady. 12, Lucas answered proudly. "I've been coding since I was 9. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's hand tightened on Daniel's arm as the implications sank in. "Daniel," Emily spoke quietly, "I think you know why we're here." The moment stretched, fragile as glass. Then Daniel straightened, his mask falling back into place. "Thank you for coming," he said stiffly. "I hope you enjoy the reception." He walked away, Olivia following after a long look at Lucas, but the damage was done. Whispers spread through the reception, guests glancing between Daniel and Lucas, noting the unmistakable resemblance. Emily touched Lucas's shoulder. "How about we head back to the hotel?" "But I wanted to tell him about my program," Lucas protested, confusion clouding his face. Emily gathered their things, fighting back tears. "Another time, sweetheart, another time." As they left, she caught one last glimpse of Daniel standing alone on the terrace, staring after them with an expression she couldn't read. Behind him, Olivia spoke urgently with the wedding planner. Damage control, already in motion, the perfect wedding had cracked wide open, revealing the truths buried beneath. In the weeks following the wedding, Olivia found herself watching her new husband unravel. Daniel spent long hours in his home office, doors locked, searching through old photos and news articles. She'd catch him staring at nothing, lost in thought, his usual laser focus scattered. "We need to talk about it," she finally said one evening, setting his untouched dinner aside. "The boy is clearly yours." Daniel didn't respond immediately, swirling the scotch in his glass. I convinced myself she was lying. The timing, it would have derailed everything. The company was just taking off. And now I can't stop seeing it. He has my mother's eyes. The way he sits when he's coding, I used to sit exactly like that. He pressed his fingers to his temples. I've missed 12 years. Olivia sat beside him. Then don't miss any more. Meanwhile, Emily threw herself into work, taking on more clients than usual. She watched Lucas carefully for signs of distress, but he seemed unchanged, still absorbed in his coding projects and school activities, until one afternoon when he looked up from his laptop with a frown. "Mom, why did Mr. Sterling act so weird at the wedding?" Emily's hands stilled on her garden sketches. "What do you mean?" "He seemed really interested in my program at first, but then he just..." And everyone was staring at us. Lucas closed his laptop. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong." Emily moved to sit beside him. "Sometimes adults have complicated histories. Did you know him before?" Emily took a deep breath. "Yes, we were close once." Before Lucas could ask more questions, her phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made her stomach drop. * Sterling Industries, Coding Innovation Program. * The email was formal, from Daniel's assistant, Claire. * Dear Ms. Carter, Sterling Industries is launching an exclusive coding program for gifted young programmers. Given Lucas's demonstrated aptitude, we would like to extend an invitation for him to participate. The program begins next month and runs for 12 weeks. Please find attached program details and registration information. Regards, Claire Harris, Executive Assistant to Daniel Sterling. * Emily's hands shook as she read the details. The program was legitimate, one of the most prestigious in the country. Lucas would love it, but the timing— Mom, you look weird. She forced a smile. Just work stuff. She closed the email, needing time to think. That night, she called Laura. He's trying to get to Lucas through coding. Are you surprised? Laura asked. It's the one thing they definitely have in common. I don't know what to do. Lucas would be amazing in this program, but you're afraid Daniel will hurt him again. Emily sighed. What if this is just damage control? What if he's only doing this because people at the wedding noticed the resemblance? Or maybe, Laura said gently, seeing Lucas made him realize what he's missed. Across town, Daniel sat in his office, staring at Lucas's registration form on his screen. Olivia had helped him draft the program proposal, making sure everything was above board and professional. It's a start, she'd said, a way to get to know him without overwhelming anyone. But as Daniel reviewed Lucas's school records, his remarkable grades, his coding competition wins, his teachers' glowing recommendations, the weight of his absence pressed down on him. 12 years of achievements he'd missed, 12 years of his son growing into a remarkable person without him. He opened his desk drawer, pulling out a photo from his own childhood, himself at 12, hunched over his first computer. The resemblance to Lucas was startling. Daniel had spent years building an empire of technology, but he'd missed building something far more important. His phone buzzed an email notification. Emily had responded to the program invitation. His finger hovered over the screen, fear and hope warring in his chest. The Sterling Industries Innovation Center hummed with energy as 20 young programmers settled into their workstations. Lucas sat in the front row, fingers hovering eagerly over his keyboard, unaware of Daniel watching through the one-way glass of the observation room. His code is exceptional, Dr. Patel, the program director, said quietly, sliding a tablet across to Daniel. Look at how he structured this algorithm. He's not just copying patterns, he's innovating. Daniel studied Lucas's work, recognizing his own early coding style in the elegant solutions. He's better than I was at his age. All the instructors say the same thing. He has your intuitive understanding of systems, but there's something else. Dr. Patel paused. He helps the other students, takes time to explain concepts, shares his insights. He's not just brilliant, he's kind. Like his mother, Daniel murmured. In the classroom, Lucas was explaining his approach to another student, his hands animated as he talked through the problem. Emily's influence was clear in his patient teaching style, so different from Daniel's own ruthlessly competitive youth. The program met 3 times a week, and Daniel found himself drawn to the observation room during every session. He watched Lucas tackle increasingly complex challenges, saw how he approached problems from unexpected angles, noticed the way other students gravitated toward his natural leadership. Emily arrived early for pickup each day, always waiting in her car outside rather than entering the building until one afternoon. When a thunderstorm forced her inside, she stood in the lobby, water dripping from her rain jacket, and found herself face to face with Daniel. He's extraordinary, Daniel said quietly before she could retreat. Emily's posture softened slightly. Yes, he is. I'd like to talk. About everything. Daniel gestured toward his office. Please. After a long moment, Emily nodded. Not here, not now, but soon. Upstairs, Lucas was presenting his latest project, a sophisticated inventory management system he developed for small businesses, inspired by his mother's garden center needs. As he demonstrated the program's features, Daniel recognized Emily's practical influence merged with his own technical ambition. Most inventory systems are designed for large companies, Lucas explained to the class, but small businesses have different needs. This adapts to their scale, while still being powerful enough to grow with them. Daniel felt pride and regret twist in his chest. His son had inherited his technical brilliance, but had channeled it into helping others rather than just pursuing profit. In 12 years of absence, Lucas had become something better than Daniel had ever been. The session ended, and students began packing up their equipment. Lucas carefully saved his work, sorted his notes with methodical precision, a habit Daniel recognized from his own routines. Through the glass, Daniel watched his son gather his things, chat with classmates, and head for the door. Every movement was a mirror of his own youth, but softened by Emily's influence, shaped by her values. In the lobby, Emily waited with 2 umbrellas, one for each of them. Daniel watched their easy interaction, the comfortable way they moved in each other's space, and felt the full weight of everything he'd thrown away 12 years ago. Olivia found him later, still standing in the observation room. "How is he today?" she asked. Though she already knew, she'd seen the changes in Daniel over the past weeks. The way he lit up, talking about Lucas's progress. "He's everything I could have been," Daniel said quietly, "if I'd made different choices." The room had grown dark, screens gone dim, but Daniel could still see Lucas's code on the monitors. Elegant solutions to complex problems, written by a child who had somehow inherited the best of both his parents while becoming entirely his own person. The Innovation Center's main auditorium buzzed with excitement on Showcase Day. Parents, tech industry leaders, and Sterling Industries executives filled the seats, while nervous students made last-minute adjustments to their presentations. Lucas sat in the front row, tablet in hand, occasionally glancing at the door where Emily had just slipped in. Daniel stood at the podium, his usual commanding presence somewhat subdued. "Welcome to the Sterling Industries Young Innovators Showcase. These students represent the future of technology, not just in their technical skills, but in their vision for how those skills can serve others." His eyes met Emily's briefly before continuing. She sat near the back, wearing a simple dress and a guarded expression. Olivia sat in the front row, her presence both supporting and monitoring her husband's every move. The presentations began. Each student demonstrated impressive projects, but the room's energy shifted noticeably when Lucas took the stage. Daniel gripped the armrest of his chair, watching his son command the audience's attention with natural ease. "My project began with a problem," Lucas started, his voice clear and confident. "Small businesses struggle with expensive, overcomplicated inventory systems. I watch my mom's garden center waste time and money dealing with software crashes and unnecessary features." He launched his demonstration, walking through the elegant interface he'd designed. The system adapts to the business's scale, learning from usage patterns to predict needs and prevent waste. It's not just about tracking inventory. It's about understanding how small businesses actually work. Daniel leaned forward, recognition hitting him like a physical blow. Lucas's project wasn't just technically brilliant. It showed a fundamental understanding of human needs, something Daniel had often overlooked in his own pursuit of innovation. Questions from the audience followed. Lucas handled them with poise, explaining complex concepts in accessible terms. When a venture capitalist asked about monetization strategies, Lucas's response left Daniel stunned. "The goal isn't to maximize profit," Lucas explained. "It's to help small businesses thrive. That's why I'm making it open source. Anyone can use it, modify it, improve it. Success isn't just about making money. It's about making a difference." Emily watched Daniel's reaction from her seat, seeing the impact of Lucas's words. The empire builder who had chosen profit over family was watching his son choose a different path. After the presentations, during the reception, Daniel found himself standing near Emily as Lucas demonstrated his project to an enthusiastic group of developers. "He has your brain," Emily said quietly, "and a heart all his own." "He has your heart," Daniel corrected. "Your way of seeing what really matters." He paused, struggling with words that had waited 12 years to be spoken. "Emily, Not now," she interrupted gently. "This is his moment." They watched as Lucas explained a particularly clever feature to Olivia, who had moved closer to study his work. Her genuine interest seemed to surprise both Lucas and Emily. "He's remarkable," Olivia said later as she and Daniel headed home. "And he's your son. There's no denying it anymore. Not to others and not to yourself." Daniel stared out the car window, remembering Lucas's presentation. His son had taken the same skills Daniel had used to build wealth and power, and instead used them to help others. In doing so, he created something more valuable than any product Daniel had ever launched. That night, Daniel sat in his office, Lucas's project documentation open on his screen. Line by line, he traced his son's work, seeing in each elegant solution a road not taken, a different kind of legacy than the one he'd spent 12 years building. He picked up his phone and began typing a message to Emily. "We need to talk about everything, please." The cursor blinked, waiting for him to hit send, while somewhere across the city, a 12-year-old boy slept peacefully, unaware that his showcase presentation had begun to crack the foundations of his father's carefully constructed world. The cafe Emily chose was deliberately neutral territory, a quiet place in Greenwich Village, far from both Sterling Industries and her usual haunts. She arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy without feeling trapped. Daniel appeared precisely on time, wearing a casual sweater instead of his usual suit. The attempt to appear less intimidating wasn't lost on Emily. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down. Olivia had offered to come, but they'd both agreed this conversation needed to happen between just the two of them. "Lucas's program launches next week," Emily began, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. 20 small businesses are already signed up to test it. "I know. The development team is impressed. They want to offer him an internship next summer." Emily's grip tightened on her cup. "He's 12, Daniel. I was 13 when I got my first programming job. And look how that turned out." The barb landed. Daniel sat back, accepting it. "I deserve that. I deserved worse." "This isn't about us," Emily said firmly. "This is about Lucas. He's starting to ask questions I can't answer anymore." "What kind of questions?" "He wants to know why you looked at him so strangely at the wedding. Why you started this coding program right after. Why everyone whispers when we're at the Innovation Center." She met his eyes. "He's brilliant, Daniel. He's going to figure it out soon." Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching pedestrians pass by the window. "What have you told him about his father? That he had to go away? That sometimes adults make choices they can't undo?" Emily's voice softened. "I never told him you denied him. I never wanted him to carry that weight." "Why?" Daniel asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "You could have taken me to court, demanded support, exposed everything, because I saw what anger and bitterness did to my own parents after their divorce. I didn't want that for Lucas." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo. This was his first coding competition win. He was 10. Daniel stared at the image, Lucas holding a trophy, beaming with pride. "I want to be part of his life," he said quietly. If he'll let me. It's not that simple." "I know. Do you?" Emily leaned forward, "Because this isn't about buying his forgiveness with coding programs and internships. He needs a father, not a mentor. I don't know how to be a father. Neither did I know how to be a single mother. I learned." Emily stood, gathering her things. "Think about what you really want, Daniel. Because if you come into his life, you don't get to leave again when it gets complicated." "What's the next step?" he asked as she turned to go. "Family therapy," she said firmly. "All of us, including Olivia. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." Daniel nodded, understanding the non-negotiable terms. "Emily," he called as she reached the door. "Thank you for raising him to be better than me." She paused, her hand on the door frame. "He got that all on his own." Outside, the autumn air was crisp with possibility. Emily texted Laura. "First step taken." "How did it go?" came the quick reply. Emily watched through the window as Daniel sat alone, staring at the photo of Lucas on his phone. "We'll see," she typed back. "We'll see." The therapist's office felt too small for the tension it contained. Dr. Anderson sat calmly in her chair, observing as Emily, Daniel, and Olivia arranged themselves on separate pieces of furniture. Lucas would join them later. But first, the adults needed to establish ground rules. "Let's be clear about our objectives," Dr. Anderson began. "We're here to create a healthy foundation for Lucas to understand his family story. This isn't about assigning blame or rehashing the past, except as it affects Lucas's present and future." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. In boardrooms, he commanded attention. Here, he seemed lost. How do we even begin to explain this to him? With honesty, Emily said quietly, "He deserves that much." Olivia, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "I'd like to be clear about my role here. I'm not trying to replace anyone, but I am part of Lucas's extended family now." Dr. Anderson nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of clarity we need. Now let's discuss how we'll approach Lucas's first session." The plan they developed was careful, measured. Lucas would join them the following week. Daniel would acknowledge his paternity directly, take responsibility for his absence, and make it clear that none of it was Lucas's fault. When Lucas finally entered the office 7 days later, the adults fell silent. He looked between them, his expression cautious but curious. "Hi, Lucas," Dr. Anderson smiled warmly. "Do you know why you're here today?" Lucas sat next to his mother, unconsciously mirroring Daniel's posture. "Mom said there are some important things we need to talk about as a family." "That's right." Emily squeezed his hand. "Mr. Sterling Daniel has something he needs to tell you." Daniel leaned forward, his practice speeches deserting him. "Lucas, I'm your father." The words hung in the air. Lucas's face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, confusion, understanding, and something harder to read. "I know," he said finally. Everyone stared at him. "You do?" Emily asked. "I figured it out after the wedding. The way people looked at us and—" He glanced at Daniel. "I found pictures of you when you were my age. We look exactly alike." Daniel felt tears threatening. "We do. Why didn't you want me?" The question was direct, devastating in its simplicity. "Oh, buddy," Daniel's voice cracked. "I was wrong, so wrong. I was scared and selfish, and I made the biggest mistake of my life. It wasn't about not wanting you. It was about me being too cowardly to be the father you deserved." Olivia touched Daniel's arm supportively as he struggled to continue. "But you want to be my dad now?" Lucas asked, his voice small. "More than anything," Daniel whispered. "If you let me try?" Lucas looked at his mother. "Mom!" Emily pulled him close. "This is your choice, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I support you." The room held its breath as Lucas processed. Finally, he turned to Daniel. "I have conditions." Daniel blinked, surprised. "Okay, first you have to come to my coding competitions. Not send someone from your company, you. Done. Second, you have to have dinner with Mom and me at least once a month. Real dinner, not fancy restaurants." Emily couldn't hide her smile at his firmness. Third, Lucas glanced at Olivia. "You have to understand that Mom is my mom. Nobody's replacing her." Olivia nodded immediately. Absolutely understood. And fourth, Lucas's voice wavered slightly. "You have to promise not to disappear again." Daniel moved to kneel in front of his son. "Eye to eye. I promise. On everything I've ever built, I promise." The therapy session continued, but something fundamental had shifted. They weren't just 4 adults and a child in a room anymore. They were the beginnings of a family. Complicated, imperfect, but trying. The first holiday season arrived like a test of their fragile new arrangement. Emily opened her front door one December evening to find Daniel and Olivia on her doorstep, carrying boxes of Christmas decorations. "Lucas mentioned you usually decorate tonight," Daniel said uncertainly. "We thought maybe—" "Come in," Emily stepped aside. "He's debugging something in his room. You know how he gets." Olivia held up a bag of takeout. "We brought dinner. That Thai place you both like." The domestic normalcy of the scene was both strange and touching. Daniel setting up a pre-lit tree while Lucas explained his latest coding project. Olivia and Emily discovering a shared passion for gardening as they untangled lights. "Mom, can I show Dad my new algorithm?" Lucas asked. The word Dad still felt new on his tongue. Daniel froze momentarily, emotion crossing his face. After dinner, Emily said firmly, "Code can wait." They ate around Emily's small dining table, takeout containers shared family style. Lucas dominated the conversation, bouncing between topics with preteen enthusiasm. The adults exchanged glances over his head, managing their complex dynamics for his sake. "Your mom tells me you're still playing soccer," Daniel ventured during a pause. Yeah, we made it to regionals. You could maybe come to my next game. I'd like that, Daniel said softly. Very much. Later, as Lucas showed Daniel his latest programming project, Olivia helped Emily with the dishes. Thank you, Olivia said quietly, for making this easier than it could have been. Emily watched through the kitchen doorway as Daniel and Lucas hunched over a laptop, their matching profiles illuminated by the screen. I'm doing it for him. I know. But still, thank you. The evening wound down with hot chocolate and Lucas's excited chatter about the upcoming school science fair. As Daniel and Olivia prepared to leave, Lucas surprised everyone by hugging his father goodbye. Daniel stood frozen for a moment before carefully returning the embrace. Over Lucas's head, his eyes met Emily's, filled with gratitude and regret. Same time next week? Lucas asked hopefully. I want to show you the science fair project. I'll be here, Daniel promised. After they left, Emily found Lucas in his room, already back at his computer. You okay, sweetheart? He nodded, then paused. Mom, are you okay with all of this? Emily sat on his bed, choosing her words carefully. I'm okay because you're happy. Olivia's not so bad, Lucas offered. She helped me optimize my database structure today. No, she's not bad at all, Emily smiled. We're all just trying our best. Lucas turned back to his screen, then stopped again. Mom, thanks for telling me the truth about Dad, even when it was hard. Emily hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. Her baby boy, growing up too fast, teaching them all how to be better people. That night, she found a text from Daniel. Thank you for tonight. For everything, she didn't respond but saved it alongside 12 years of memories. Lucas's first steps, first words, first line of code. A new chapter was beginning, messy and complicated and hopeful. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the city in a blank white page, ready for their story to continue. The Sterling Industries Innovation Center was transformed for the annual student showcase. This year's event had been moved to December, fairy lights twinkling alongside cutting-edge tech displays. In the front row, an unlikely family sat together. Emily and Daniel on either side of Lucas, with Olivia beside Daniel. All focused on the stage where Dr. Patel was making opening remarks. This year's showcase is special, she announced, as we're introducing a new award for innovation with social impact, inspired by last year's standout project. Lucas fidgeted with his tablet, his new project hidden behind password protection. Emily squeezed his hand while Daniel straightened his tie, a matching set they'd picked out together last weekend. You've got this, Daniel whispered. No matter what happens. The past year had brought changes none of them could have predicted. Regular family dinners had evolved from awkward to comfortable. Soccer games featured both parents cheering from the sidelines. Olivia had transformed Emily's garden center with Lucas's inventory system, now implemented in small businesses across the city. Lucas took the stage, more confident than last year, but still with that endearing touch of nervousness. His project filled the screens behind him, a family tree algorithm that mapped emotional connections alongside genetic ones. Traditional family trees show us where we come from, he began, but they don't show us who we are. This program maps the connections that matter, the choices we make, the bridges we build, the love that defines us beyond DNA. The demonstration showed how his algorithm tracked relationships, support networks, emotional bonds. Emily watched Daniel's face as their complicated family appeared on screen, represented not as a traditional tree, but as an intricate web of healing connections. Family isn't just about biology, Lucas continued. It's about showing up. It's about trying again when you make mistakes. It's about choosing to be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. In the audience, Olivia slipped her hand into Daniel's, while Emily wiped away tears. Their son, because he had become, in some way, all of theirs, was teaching them about forgiveness and growth through lines of code. After the presentation, during the reception, Dr. Patel approached their group. The foundation would like to expand Lucas's program nationally, she said. With proper funding and support, it could help a lot of families. What do you think, buddy? Daniel asked, the endearment falling naturally now. Lucas looked at his parents, all of them, and smiled. I think we have some coding to do. Later that night, in Emily's backyard, they celebrated with hot chocolate and stargazing. Lucas sat between his parents on the old porch swing, Olivia adding marshmallows to everyone's mugs. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Emily asked quietly, watching their breath mist in the December air. Daniel shook his head. "I didn't deserve to." "Maybe it's not about deserving," Lucas said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's just about trying, like debugging. You find the errors and fix them one line at a time." The adults exchanged glances over his head, humbled once again by his wisdom. Above them, stars pierced the city's glow. While inside Emily's house, Lucas's laptop displayed his family tree algorithm, connections pulsing gently like heartbeats. Not a tree anymore, but a constellation, each point of light finding its proper place in a universe of second chances.